One of the things when you become a landlord that you will undoubtedly be thinking about is vacancies. So we're going to talk to Casey from Brick by Brick Wealth and ask her how she reduces vacancies across her portfolio. Casey, what do you got?
A lot of things. I feel like vacancy is a killer, and a lot of people will buy in these cheaper areas because of the higher cash flow, but they forget about vacancy. They forget about frequent turnovers. They forget about people just ditching in the middle of the night, moving out, breaking their lease, and now you have to rent the property out again. And if you are having a property management company manage your property for you, then it's a little bit more than 10% of rents that they take when managing your property. Many times, not all the time, but a lot of times, property management companies will take first month's rent to place new tenants. And a lot of times, if you have a tenant break the lease in their first year, the property management company is still going to take first month's rent again if they've maybe stayed at least 5 or 6 months of the lease. They're not going to promise that the tenant's going to stay the whole time, and if they don't, they'll put a new person in for free. No. So vacancy is very costly. So a few tips that I have for minimizing vacancy, right? Because that's a big money sucker. First of all is buy in the better neighborhoods where people are more responsible, less likely to break the lease, and that right there will help dramatically. I have found that my better neighborhoods, and with me and my students, the better the neighborhood, the tenants follow the lease. They stay the whole term, And I have found much more people will break the lease in the not as great neighborhoods for whatever reason. And then you've got vacancy, you got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay a new, lease, renewal, and all those things. It's expensive. So buying the better neighborhoods one. An easy one right now is, if you can, don't list your property in the winter. Rents are always down in the winter time, so you're going to have a longer vacancy, typically on average, in my opinion, to fill a vacancy of a new property that you have in the winter might take you 2 months, whereas in maybe the spring or summer, you could get a qualified tenant within a couple of weeks. So to avoid that, for me, I always seem to buy my properties and have them rehabbed and ready to rent in the winter. I don't know why. It's just my curse. So I will not do a 1-year lease and end in November, right? I'm going to do an odd numbered lease. I'm going to have whatever my lease is end in the spring or the summertime.
There you go.
So typically I also do 2-year leases up front to start. And I feel like this really helps. The reason why I do 2-year leases is this. If people are already knowing they only want to stay for 1 year, it's going to be a no for me, because then I have to do this all over again. Have to find a new tenant again. If I have a property manager, I have to pay the new leasing fee because they moved out. So I'll ask people, it's one of my qualifying questions, what's your plan? How long, I do 2-year lease agreements. Is that okay with you? And they'll say, oh, actually, no, I'm looking for a 1 year. I go, oh, why? Oh, because I'm planning on moving to Texas next year, or I'm planning on moving here, or doing this, or buying a house. It's like, sorry, we do a 2-year minimum lease agreement. So if people are willing to stay for 2 years, they're likely willing to stay more. Oh, I hate moving. I'm really looking for someplace long term. Awesome. Fewer turnovers means they'll stay forever. And using that method, my tenants stay for like 5 years or more. I mean, they stay a long time. I got many more, but I've been talking a lot. So
I think that 2-year lease is an interesting hack. I think if you buy and remodel in the winter, getting that odd month lease, always targeting the spring or summer, is very wise advice. Nicer neighborhoods. It's funny, my average turnover in my houses is almost 8 years.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's certainly better than apartments. Apartments are under 2 years. That can get very expensive very quickly. What else do you got? What are other things you think about to reduce vacancies?
So another thing I do to reduce vacancy is always make the property a good deal for my tenants. Keep them there. I want my tenants to stay forever. I want them to stay forever. I never want them to leave, right?
Right.
So that will avoid major upgrades and vacancy and everything. So I do a variety of things to keep them there. First of all, I try my hardest. I try not to raise rent very much. So when I do raise rent, right, because remember, depending upon where you are, even if you don't raise your rent, you still have 2 other things increasing every single year. Possibly property taxes, depending upon where you are at, and home insurance. always
Yeah,
going up. So you got to be careful. You do have to raise your rents, but
yeah,
I will never raise my rents to market rent when a tenant's there and I want to keep them, because then they're like, let me see what else is out there. And then they might leave.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
I'm always leaving it just a little bit, $50 a month, below market rent, or 75,
yeah.
to always make my property be the best deal.
Yeah, I think that's such wise advice, and I've used that as well historically. When you have tenants that are doing the right things, they're calling on repairs that need to be done, they're paying their rent, keeping keeping the rents below market, because you don't want to cause that choice, right?
Mhm.
Once you go to market, it's a choice. They could take yours or something else. You want to be below that, so they really don't have a choice. I think that's very wise
Yeah.
advice.
And one more thing that I do is when I do buy a property and I'm renovating it or rehabbing it. Now, when I'm buying a property that I'm keeping to rent out, I'm likely not flipping it, right, to make it A
Right,
plus condition, because that's usually not cost effective.
right,
But I'm doing the upgrades necessary to keep a tenant there. So I'm usually doing some sort of kitchen upgrade, whether that is a granite countertop or I'm painting the cabinets. Nice appliances. I'm making it desirable and not like a crappy, nasty
yeah,
house. I have potential tenants when they call me on the phone, and this is what I've been hearing lately. Potential tenants will say, it's now I'm in Memphis. It's so hard to find a quality property. It looks
mm,
fine online, and then I get there and it's crappy. The
right,
paint is nasty, like it's just been pieced together. It's gross. And I say, yeah, I understand a lot of property management companies do the bare minimum. And
right,
I'm a owner who renovates and my own properties, and I landlord. And so landlord properties usually have just a little bit higher quality done with the renovations. They do. They
mhm,
have more attention to detail. I'm seeing the property, I'm paying the bill, I'm in charge of everything. Whereas property management companies are doing it for somebody else, and somebody else, the owner, says, "Well, how much is it going to cost? What's the minimum? Well, how can we do it for cheaper?"
mhm,
They're not there. They're not dealing with tenants. So I will do a decent upgrade on my property. And so when potential tenants are looking at my property, they see mine. Oh, wow, this is really well done. Your paint lines are nice and clean. You don't have globs everywhere. It's nicely done versus
right.
bare minimum, barely cleaned it. And so my tenants, I will attract top quality tenants. I feel like, and that's my goal, to attract the best tenants with the best FICO scores, the best
Mhm.
incomes, so that they stay forever and always keep it below market rent.
There you go. This is great advice. Casey, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and ask questions, how should they do that?
People can always reach me every day on Instagram at Brick by Brick Wealth. And you can check out my website, brickbybrickwealth.com, and you can see all the other places I am, YouTube, all sorts of places.
Folks, do me a favor on Instagram, send her a note saying, thank you for coming on One Rental at a Time. We appreciate your time each week, Casey. Thank you so much.